Right then, so for this test today, folks, we're going to compare back to back the Micro-OLED optical engine, which I'm using now, against the QLED 50 ppd standard version. This isn't going to be a really scientific test because, well, it's Christmas and I'm tired and I can't be bothered to do a massive specification sheet. But it's going to be probably actually more important and more useful than that, because it's very rare you get a chance to actually test things back to back. And I'm going to tell you how they feel. I think this will be a really interesting test because often when you do comparisons, you talk about field of view figures and all kinds of things, but it's when you actually just jump straight from one to the other where you can really tell the differences. So I'm not going to bother with the 57 ppd and the ultra-wide. I have been using them, by the way, today. I'm going to save your time. I'm not going to do separate tests with them because I've already tried them and I can sort of include that in my thoughts. But one thing I am going to do in this test is jump straight from the Micro-OLED to the 50 ppd, just to give you an idea of what it feels like in comparison. Now I'm going to use the exact same weather, aircraft, location, obviously, because otherwise it wouldn't make much sense. I'm going to give you my FPS results as well. And I am running the sim basically on ultra settings as well, so I'm really testing and taxing my card. So let's just get airborne here, and I'll just give you a quick sort of overview of what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing. So just to say, as we get airborne, that this video is proudly sponsored by FS Academy. They have been amazing this year sponsoring the channel, and they do have a fantastic range of mission packs, tutorials, training, well, yes, a training syllabus really, all the way from a GA pilot up to an airline captain. And in those tutorials you'll get bespoke instructions from the pilot beside you, and actually in VR that feels pretty damn special, I must say. I know there's others out there now, but I must admit I still feel that FS Academy just does things in a way that feels accessible and real. You know, it feels like he's talking to you as he's giving you all these instructions, and you learn a lot. And trust me folks, this hobby is all about learning new things, and it can feel very rewarding. So all of the links for FS Academy will be in the notes below. So let's get into this as we fly over the beautiful coastline of Brighton. And I have just used the 50 ppd and I'll use it again in a minute. But the first thing that really strikes me is the difference in depth of colours. Now the 50 ppd is noticeably a lot brighter than this, it is, but it's not. Sometimes that brightness is a bit synthetic. It's not like the brightness you feel from the sun. It's just all of the colours are lifted, and sometimes that can make it feel a little bit more washed out. With the Micro-OLED, as I'm looking there at all those white beautiful buildings there, all those hotels, you can see actually my DFR working really well as well, the blues of the sky and the sea, the clouds and the shadow here along the cockpit, it's all a lot deeper. You know, it's hard to explain, but that's the first thing you really notice. More so for me than the field of view, which obviously there's a bit of a change there as well, because I'm getting about 110 degrees horizontal. But that's because I don't really like to have the headset squished to my face. You could probably get a bit more than that if you had a different facial interface and all that kind of thing. Maybe 112, 114. With the 50 ppd, I'm looking at around 126 or more horizontal. So there is a big difference in the field of view. Actually, it doesn't sound like there is on paper, but actually, and this is what I was talking about before, in practice, when you go from one to the other, doing an A-B comparison like this, you can tell. This is another thing, right? This is perfect. As the sun is casting a beautiful reflection onto the sea there, that's a real sort of deep yellow, you know? Whether in the 50 ppd, that would be a lot brighter and almost whitish. and that's just because of the different color palette and the brightness. Things being brighter isn't always better in VR, folks. This gives you a better sense of depth. But there is other things that I've noticed straight away, and that is the glare. There is a bit of glare in this, and sometimes, a lot of the time, it's not there at all, but sometimes it is. And in a scene like this, I'm actually seeing right now, looking at this, a little bit of glare at the bottom of the lens. You don't get that with aspheric lenses, okay? So if you hate glare, then don't bother with the micro-OLED module. Another thing that I will say is because these lenses, even though they're exceptionally good for this type of display, it's really hard, folks, to get a decent optical stack with a tiny micro-OLED panel. And many of the manufacturers, such as Big Screen and, Shift All, have struggled with it. But I must admit, Pimax are leading it with the best optics so far. They're still not quite as good in terms of the sweet spots as the big 50 ppd glass aspheric lenses, and that's just simply because they're smaller lenses. So that's another thing that you notice straight away, and I think overall, actually, probably the 50 ppd is just a little bit more comfortable to look through than this. But I'm being mega picky here because, I can fly in this for a couple of hours, no problems at all, and feel fine. Especially now they've changed the distortion profile, because I moaned about that to Pimax, and thankfully they did listen, and now it's a lot better. But yeah, I do feel the standard 50 ppd is just a very nice balance. Look at this beautiful scenery here, folks. Photogrammetry, you can see here the wings are rocking around. This is the Black Square Bonanza. Probably my favourite aircraft of the year, to be honest. The turbine version. I've been flying this just everywhere. I'm currently on a bit of a tour in Italy, off camera, of course. But yeah, no, this is a fantastic aircraft. So yeah, obviously, what we're going to do now is just do a black level test, and then I'll swap over. But before that, I'll just say again, my performance figures. I'm getting 50 to 55 frames per second at the moment in full and native resolution. I'll stick on the screen now what I'm getting with the full native resolution, because there is a big difference. Now, comparing this to the 57 ppd, actually, that's the worst one for optics. It has a much smaller sweet spot. It has chromatic aberration, a lot worse as well, which I think is part of the reason why the sweet spot feels small. It also has, Miura, of course, which this doesn't have. That's a big deal as well. The micro-OLED, I look through this display, I'm looking at these clouds right now, folks, and it doesn't look like I'm looking through a panel. That just looks like I'm looking straight at the clouds. You don't get that with the QLED variants. Depending on how lucky you are with the Miura, you will see some faint lines, and all QLED modules suffer from that. And the 57, that actually runs the best. It has the lowest rendering target. It is also the sharpest, but between this and the 57 ppd, there isn't a lot of difference, to be honest. I feel that this is almost as sharp. In fact, if anything, this is sharper in the distance, because you don't get that Miura effect. And these optics with the fill factor of micro-OLED, I think, wins over. So overall, this has a better feeling of sharpness to me than even the 57 ppd. However, if you're looking at gauges close up like this, then the 57 does edge it a little bit, but further out, I think the micro-OLED wins on that one as well. Right, folks, so I've now just swapped to the 50 ppd, and this is so interesting. This is why I really love these direct A/B comparisons, because it's all very well talking about the different specifications and all the figures, but you really do appreciate the differences when you just basically swap from one to the other really quickly, as I'm overspeeding. So now, the thing is, the first thing again that hits me is the colors are so different, actually. Even though this is QLED, so it's much nicer than just standard LCD without a quantum dot layer behind it. The thing is about this display is it doesn't feel like a winter scene anymore now. It feels almost like a late summer evening, because all of those colours are now lightened up. You know, the darker areas are lighter. But one thing I want to make very clear in this video, okay, is this still looks absolutely brilliant. And I do think some people out there will actually prefer this to the micro OLED. It's not like the micro OLED is just the all singing, all dancing, everyone's going to love it and hate the QLED versions. It's not as simple as that. And this reminds me of how damn good the standard 50 ppd optical engine actually is. It's really good. This feels really comfortable on my eyes. And yeah, I just feel like the overlap's just a bit better. It probably isn't, but I don't know. Maybe it's the larger area that I'm looking through with these lenses that give me a better sense of comfort with these lenses on my eyes. Another thing that's a huge difference, of course, is the field of view. And yeah, with the 126, 128 horizontal, and it's well over 100, I think it's 103 or something vertical, and the big oval shape that provides, it's just a far bigger area to look through, and that is very highly immersive. Now, I will talk about the ultrawide as well, because I did try that one. I don't know, for that particular module, even though the field of view again is, you can definitely tell again it's even bigger than this. It's 136 measured for me, so it's 10 degrees more. For me, it just feels a little bit less comfortable on the eyes, and over, you know, a couple of hours or so, it just doesn't feel quite as relaxing. I personally feel, and I've said this anyway, I'm kind of just reiterating what I've said already, to be fair, but if you don't know because of my previous videos, maybe you haven't watched them or whatever, or you can't remember, I've always said that the standard 50 ppd is the one that makes the most sense for most of you out there. There is a few trade-offs, there's a few issues though that I've got to talk about. First of all, the performance is a lot lower than this. I'm actually getting 41 frames per second versus 55 with the OLED module, and that's with a 5090. So I think the resolution 6240 by 6280, something like that. Whether the resolution for the micro OLED is about 5 something. The 57 ppd is something like 4800 by something, which again is a lot lower and is the better one in terms of performance. But you do trade field of view and optics. The sweet spot isn't as good. But yeah, this one is very good actually. It's been a while since I've used the standard 50 ppd, and I'm quite shocked by how good it is. The lack of glare as well. There's just no glare at all, which is very nice. I am going to use this a fair bit, to be fair. I think for me, I will still be using this module because there are times where I will just fancy that better field of view and lack of glare. But this is so interesting doing this test back to back, because it has reminded me how damn good this module is. It's not as clear cut, folks. For me, the micro OLED will always win for my personal tastes. I do actually have two 50 ppd modules. I'm not quite sure why. I think they sent me another one in another headset by accident or something, but I do have two. One of them has terrible Miura in it. This one doesn't. This one is like the cleanest QLED display of the bunch. That includes the ultrawide and the 57. It's almost Miura free, but it's not quite. And I think even this display, which is as good as it gets, there is still a graininess to that panel if you really look for it. In this sort of perfect example here, this white cloud coming up, as I'm getting closer, I can see the graininess of that display, and it reminds me that I am looking through a VR headset. I'm looking through a panel. You just don't get that with micro OLED. So it's not just about the pretty colors and the deep blacks. It's also about the general quality of the display itself. But I am being really picky there, folks. I really am. And I think overall, I am genuinely very surprised with how much I really do like this module as well. I personally would pick this over the ultrawide. The 57 ppd actually used to be my favorite of the three QLED panels. only because it is sharper than this. It definitely is a bit sharper, but again, I don't think most people really notice that difference in sharpness. It's only when you're looking at fine text, like your pressure setting, you know, all these gauges here, then you do notice that slight difference in clarity. One more thing I do have to mention, and then we'll do a black levels test and end the video, is the comforts. This is a lot heavier. Actually, when you go back to back, it's surprising how much heavier this is. You definitely feel the frontal weight more with the QLED. And I definitely would recommend the top strap on this. Even with the OLED version, but definitely with this. But yeah, this does look really good. It's just the colours are just, they feel washed out, which is something I would never usually say about QLED. But back to back, like that scene there is just so much more convincing and a lot more deeper with the OLED. Right, anyway, let's now test the black levels. I'm going to just take the lights down. That bloody pause. Asobo, please sort that out. And let's have a look here, because the local dimming, you know, with the QLED panels, they're pretty damn good these days. Let's just change the weather as well, because this cloud is going to mess things up. Because Asobo, well, they haven't really got the black levels in the sim that well when it comes to clouds and the lights emitting from the ground. So I'm just going to change the weather to clear skies. So this scene here looks very convincing. And actually, we've now shot up to 55 frames per second. Wow. The power of the 5090 doing its thing. But in areas like here, without the city lights, it's kind of like a, it's not perfectly black. And actually, I've noticed something as well. As I move my cursor around, that white cursor has got a bit of blooming to it. It's very, very slight, guys. But there's a bit of blooming there. Especially as the darker... Yeah, oh wow, that's interesting. Now that we're getting away from the city lights, the ground has got a bit darker, but there's a blooming I can see with this mouse, but it's still not pitch black. But I will say it is a convincing scene. This does feel like nighttime. This is a little bit bright, this cockpit. Let me just take this back a bit. You know, the cockpit lighting of the black square aircraft are absolutely second to none. Highly recommend these aircraft, folks. I really do. So yeah, this is a very nice scene here, and it looks good. And if you're not really a massive fan of flying at night, then you're not really going to miss out too much. But I can see blooming down there. Yeah, there's quite a bit of blooming in this area here. And if we just go into the back where it's a bit darker, it's one of those things that if you didn't have a lot of lights like this, then it would feel like a darker scene, because it is having a hard time right now trying to use the dimming zones the best it can. And the resolution of those dimming zones, or the amount of dimming zones, well, even though it's greater than the crystal light, you're still going to get blooming. But yeah, this is a very nice scene, folks. I'm now going to jump into the micro OLED. I'm going to pause the sim, and let's see how it compares. Here we go. Okay. Right then, so we're back in the OLED for this geeky test. And we're actually getting 60 odd frames per second now in this scene. And you know, it's funny because I do complain a little bit about the black levels in my full review of this in MSFS. But when I do this back to back, holy shit. Yeah, there's just a massive difference. Okay. That's funny that, because I'm just overspeeding here. My aircraft is moaning at me. But oh yeah, this is a huge, huge difference. Like, this area here is completely black. And then you've got the beautiful lights there of the shoreline. You can even see the lights there of the wind farms. And the night sky isn't completely pitch black, but that is a Sobo thing, in my opinion. It's not where it should be. But even the... Oh, wow, the panel here just looks gorgeous, bathed in this beautiful lighting. This is just where it's at for me, folks. Absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt. It just excites me in a way that I can't express on camera. It's very hard. Just, this is what I've been wanting for a very long time a 4K micro OLED display like this with eye tracking. There's a reason why this module is the most expensive, because it is the best. It is, especially for this type of thing anyway, for me. I keep saying for me because there's... Oh, wow, yeah, that's nice. That's very bright all of a sudden. There is a few things that you must understand. The main trade-offs are... Let's just conclude this then, and I can enjoy flying again. The main difference is, obviously, field of view, depending on which version you go for. But let's just go for real time again. There we go. The field of view, but I think the field of view in the micro OLED is actually fine. It does feel good enough, you know. It doesn't feel small. I don't think it's very comparable to well, the Quest, or even better than that. You know, you're getting 110, 112 degrees, or even maybe more than that. But the field of view of the ultra wide, which I personally don't recommend so much as the standard 50 ppd, there is a big difference. It does feel a lot bigger. Just the general shape of that field of view, both vertically and horizontally, just stretches it out enough for it to be quite a substantial difference. Also, the 50 ppd is brighter, but in my opinion it lightens all the colours up to a point where they do feel a little bit washed out when compared to the OLED. So even though you are gaining brightness, you are losing colour depth, in my opinion. Also, with the 50 ppd, it is harder to run. If you've got a 5090 though, don't worry about that. But if you've got something like a 4070, then I would recommend going for the 57 ppd QLED if you really want a QLED display. The micro OLED actually does run pretty well with a 5070 Ti, and it does run okay with a 4070 Ti Super with DLSS 4. So that's worth noting, the performance differences between them all. Obviously the big difference, and one of the major points for me, if I had to pick one thing that I love about the micro OLED more than anything else, it's not the black levels, it's not the colours, it's not the lightness, because this feels a lot more comfortable than the QLED as well. It is this, looking at skies and seeing absolutely no mirror, no blemishes, nothing. It's just a perfect sky that is uninterrupted, and it feels wonderful to look at. But one thing I have learned from this test, the QLED 50 ppd version, the standard, still really impresses me, and I'll still be using it as well when I'm in the mood, because that extra field of view and lack of glare is very welcome indeed sometimes, because I don't think many people are complaining about the glare, or the YouTubers, but I will say there is glare in this. At the moment I can't see it, it's not there, but there is certain lighting conditions where you will see it. I think the only other thing to mention is colour fringing. There is sort of a brown tinting on the edges of this display that you won't get in the QLED variants, and you really do need to get close to these lenses as much as possible so that you mitigate that. But even so, you will still see it. Like now, if I crane my eyes to the right hand side, that white cloud becomes a little bit brown as I look really far to the right. That's colour fringing. You do get that with micro OLED. You don't get that with a QLED panel. And I think that'll do, folks. There's probably other things I could test, and I know this has been more of a sort of talking point video, you know, a bit of a sort of off the cuff thing, but I thought it'd be interesting to make anyway. Thanks for watching, folks, and if you're still watching, may I wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye for now. Do you know, I do love Brighton. It's been a while since I've been to Brighton. I got my first FJR from a guy in Brighton, by the way. That's a motorcycle, if you're wondering. Since then, I've had about 3 or 4 of them, and I friggin' love them. But yeah, Brighton is one of those places where it's just a wonderful place to be. Although, I would not recommend fish and chips on the pier, because they're absolutely extortionate and not that good. For the best fish and chips, I'd recommend going a bit further north and going to Whitby. Anyway, I'm really going now. Thank you for all your support this year. It's really meant a lot. And I might have one more video to post. I'm not sure yet, but in any case, I'll see you in 2026. Take care.